Well, welcome back everybody. This is the third video sequence on database normalization, and I have another example here for you that I want to work through. In this particular example, the starting relation is displayed here, and what we have here is a relation initially with 5 fields. We have an order date, a customer, which is the name of the customer, and then we have the name of the product, the price, and the quantity. So to look at this and follow through the process, the very first thing we want to do is, in testing for first normal form, is to see if there are any repeating groups. And I can tell right off the bat that the last 3 fields are going to be repeating groups, or a repeating group. But to illustrate that, let me bring up the text editor here and take a look at this example. So again, just coming up with some sample data. Let's say you had a customer who was placing an order for some products, and let's say that they were say this is a student and they're buying textbooks, let's say. So one of the books might be underwater basket weaving, and being a textbook, they're not the cheapest things in the world, at least in terms of their price. But if I look through this thing and put some stuff together, say we've got a couple of books here. Let's see. Oops. So in looking at this problem, the first question we need to think about is, are there any repeating groups? And if I just put some sample data here just to show you a couple of orders that could exist, you'll notice that this first person here, let's say this is a student purchasing books for courses, right? And you can see here that they're purchasing 3 books, or this person is purchasing 3 books, and then you got another person here purchasing 2, and it doesn't look like there are repeating groups here until you realize that these first 2 rows really are going to have to be duplicated in order to make this thing work, or to actually, if I was going to store this into a real database, I would need to duplicate this data. So when you look at it this way, you begin to see that I've got repeating data here. Now the funny thing about a repeating group is it's not what's repeating that's actually part of the repeating group. It's the other stuff that's not repeating. And so it's kind of backwards in its definition, but these last 3 fields are the repeating group. And the reason we use that terminology that way is because if I were to take and flatten my data into a situation where I didn't have any duplicate data showing up, what I would have to do is put my records together like this. So Louise Muller here, I would need to do something like this. So now there are only two rows, one for Tim and one for Louise. And you'll notice for myself here that underwater basket weaving, the name of the book, the price, and the quantity is listed here for one book, and then it repeats again for the second book, and then it repeats again for the third book. So that is my repeating group. It's those three fields that keep repeating for any one particular order. In this case, the order that was placed on 12/13/2016 for Tim. So that's how you identify a repeating group. So with that in mind, I know that those last three fields are the repeating group in this relation. And so what I want to do is follow the steps in step 1 here, A through E. The first step says to remove the repeating fields from the original relation and create a new one with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to, this new relation that I have is only going to contain the three fields that we just mentioned. Now, these three fields all pertain to a product. So I'm going to name this relation here product. So that's step 1. Then it says to assign a primary key to the new relation. Now, product is what makes each product unique, at least for the time being. So that will be my primary key. Now it says to assign a primary key to the original relation. And for this, the question here is, what makes each record unique? Now, it's not enough to say that the order date is unique, because you could place multiple orders on the same date. It's not enough to say that the order date and the customer together are unique, because you could have an order date and a customer, and the customer could place the order multiple times. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to do here. I forgot to take the stuff I moved down out of the original relations. So those have to go away. So this is what I've got left. So when you look at these two fields, you really can't say that either of those could be unique, or both of them, because you could have the same customer place an order again on the same day, in which case those two fields would match. So what we really need to do here is we need to add a surrogate key to this relation so that we have something that can be unique. Now we can say that the order ID is unique. So if you need to, if you can't come up with something that's unique, you just create a field, make it a surrogate key, and that's what's unique. So that takes care of step C. Now it says to add the primary key field you chose in step C, which is order ID. We had to create it, but that's our choice. So to take that and combine it with the existing primary key defined in step B, which was product. So what that means is that I have to take and put down here this order ID and make it part of the primary key in that second relation. That's what I just did in step D. Now it says in step E to identify the fields you added in step D, which is the order ID. This really should say identify the field with a parenthesis like that. So identify the field or fields you added as foreign keys. So basically what they're saying is that this order ID field here needs to be noted as a foreign key field. So that's what we just did. By the way, Lucidchart keeps wanting to shift this image over on me, so I apologize for that. When you guys are watching this video, it'll move once in a while, and I'm not doing that on purpose. It's just Lucidchart is being weird here sometimes, and so hopefully that won't happen very often. But anyway, okay, so we now have finished step 1. So now we move to step 2. Make sure all fields are divided up as much as possible. Well, to do that, when I look at the order ID, that's just a number, so that's already divided. We can't divide that any further. With the order date, theoretically, we could break that into month, day, and year, but it wouldn't benefit us to do that. So generally for dates, we usually don't break those up. We look at customer here. That's a case where we would want to make a first and last name at the very least. So we'll do a customer F name and a customer L name. For the second relation, we have an order ID again, and product here is really better termed product name, and price here can't be broken any further, nor can quantity. So really that's as far as making things atomic, that's as far as we can go there. So that takes care of step 2. Now step 3 says remove any calculated attributes. There are no calculated attributes here, so we don't have to worry about that. Now it says 4, if a subset of attributes describes a different entity, assign each field a prefix and add a new attribute with an ID suffix to the subgroup. Well, if we look at this first relation, we have a customer here, a first and last name. Those two things are attributes for a customer. So these two fields essentially are subgroups, because the relation is called order, and then we have information about a customer here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cust ID field, and then I'm going to abbreviate the other two like this. So they all start with CUST as a prefix, and then I have added cust ID in as what will become a surrogate primary key, but for now it's just an additional attribute. Now I'm going to do the same thing down below. So I'm going to take product name, and I'm going to make a prod ID, and that field is going to be my primary key instead of product name. And what I'll do with product name is I will put prod in as the prefix, and I will also do this for price. Now what about quantity? What do I put for quantity? Do I put order or prod here? Well, the quantity is for a product, but it's specifically pertains to an order. It's how many of that product you want in your order. So I'm just going to leave that one alone for right now, because I'm not really sure what to put on front of that. Do I put order or product? So I'm going to leave that one alone, and we'll come back to it. Make sure relations have a primary key. Well, we've already taken care of that. We have primary keys on both. So we're ready now to begin creating our dependency diagram for both relations. So we have two relations. which means we're going to need two dependency diagrams, one for each relation. So I'm going to take a box, bring it down, and I'm going to label this box order ID, and I'm going to choose a font which is a fixed length font, which is, I'll use Liberation Mono for this. And what I want to do is take and duplicate this and make one of these for each field. Now I've got a total of 5, so we're going to need 5 of these. And the second one will be order date, and cust ID, CUSTF name, and CUSTL name. Since order ID is the primary key, I'm going to underline the text, and I'm going to fill the box here and make it a different color. So now my dependencies. Now, by definition, a primary key determines every other attribute in a relation, which means I will want to draw arrows to every other box coming off of the first one, like this. So that's an automatic. We always will do that. What we want to do next is go to the second field and say, if we saw an order date that was the same in our table, two order dates that were identical, would that guarantee another field in the table to always be identical as well? And we really can't say that an identical order date would always give us an identical anything else. But when I look at customer ID, if I see the customer ID value in here in this table, if I see the same customer ID, will I always get the same order date? No, because a customer could create different orders on different dates. Same thing with order ID. A customer could make multiple orders. But when I look at cust ID and customer first name, there I would say, yeah, if I see customer 10, that's always going to be, let's say, Roger Smith, let's say. If I see customer 10, it will always show me Roger Smith, no matter what, because customer 10 is always that same person. So because of that, I can put a dependency here between those two fields, between customer ID and these two. So customer ID is my determinant, and these other two fields are dependents. And if I keep going, the name fields, if there's duplicates on names, I can't really conclude anything else. So I'm done with this particular relation at this point. I've got my dependency diagrams looking good. I'm just going to move this up just a little bit here. And then let's take a look at the next one. So again, I need to reproduce this. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 5 fields. So I'm going to take and duplicate this diagram and bring it down here. Now in this particular relation, we have order ID and prod ID together are the primary key for this relation. And order ID is a foreign key, so I put that in italics. So what are my dependencies in this particular case? Well, I know that the product ID will determine the product name and the price. I also know that the combination of the two fields, since it's a primary key, that they will determine everything else. So I need to draw a line. Now you notice that it's fighting me to try to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a circle. I'm going to find one that I want. I'm going to take a circle here, and I'm going to take the text out of it, and I'm going to make it as small as I can get it, and I'm going to put it right into the center here. Now actually what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get it close to the middle. It won't let me get it exactly where I want it. And if I turn off snap to grid, it lets me put it exactly where I want to put it. So I'll go back up, and it's under view, grid, and I'll turn it back on again. So it'll let me do that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and connect those two arrows to the circle, and I'm going to turn off the arrowheads. And let me show you how I'm doing that here. So if you look at Lucidchart, there is when I click a line, at the top there is a series of line indicators, and the one on the right shows an arrow in it. I'm going to click on it and turn that line off. Now another thing I will mention here is I'm running the beta version of the improved Lucidchart interface. And if you look up in my browser at the upper right corner, it says exit beta. So I'm in a beta right now of Lucidchart, the new and improved version. So I'm running that beta. That's why it looks a little bit different in its interface at the top. But now that I've got this, I can take and draw lines that go and connect me to the other boxes like that. So I've already taken care of product ID on his own. What about order ID? If I have the same order ID in a table, does it guarantee that anything else will be the same in this table? It really doesn't, right? So I can't connect order ID to anything on its own. I already took care of product ID. I saw that I could connect product ID to name and price. Quantity really doesn't connect to anything individually. When I look at the quantity, when I take an order ID and a product ID and combine them together, they collectively determine a quantity. So I have order 100, product 5, the person wants 6 of them. If I duplicate that order ID, product ID combination, which of course I can't do because it's a primary key, but if I could, I would get the same quantity. So the dependency diagram at this point is complete the way it's written. So then the next thing we want to do is go and test our second normal form condition. So that's where we're headed next. So for this next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two dependency diagrams that I created, and I'm going to move them down. So they're going to go off screen for a second here, but I will get everything the way it should be here in a second. Here we go. Okay, so we're now ready to consider our second normal form. So the first question or the first test condition is that the relation must be in first normal form. Now we have two of them here. They're both in first normal form. The second question, is the primary key a single attribute or multiple attributes? Well, for the first relation, it is a single attribute. That means that the relation is automatically in second normal form. We don't need to go any further. We can proceed to this third normal form test. So what I'll do is I will take this first diagram and I'll just get rid of it. Now I made a copy of it, so I'm not actually deleting it. It still exists up in the test for first normal form. It's up there still. But for the second grouping down here, it's not here anymore. So I just want to consider the first one. So the question is, since the primary key has multiple attributes, I go to step 3. Do any partial dependencies exist? Well, a partial dependency is when you have a non-key attribute, such as prod name and prod price, depending on only part of the primary key. Prod name is a dependent who is determined by prod ID, and prod ID is partial. It's a part of the primary key, so this is a partial dependency right here. And then for price, that is also a partial dependency. So yes, we have partial dependencies. Therefore, we go to step A of part 3, create a new relation for each attribute in the composite primary key. So what that means is we take our order ID and we take our product ID and we put them down here like this, and we make it the primary key of the relation. Now it's already red and underlined, so we're good there. Then it says to move the dependents into the new relation. So if I take prod ID out, name and price come along for the ride because they're connected to prod ID. So what I'm going to do is take these two and move them down here. Of course, when I do that, it makes a great big mess. So I'm going to fix that by dragging this. Oh, I just screwed up. I've got to bring it down here. I think what I'll do is I will duplicate, instead of trying to drag these down, I'll just duplicate them like this. So prod name and prod price, I will bring them down like so. And as you can see, they were connected. So I'm going to put that connection down here again. Right? And then, so I've got that. Now, order ID has nothing connected to it, so he stands out here on his own. There are no dependents, basically. Since there are no dependents for order ID, I can't make a relation out of that, so I can just delete him out. The steps don't indicate that here, but I can tell you, and I should add this, I should really add that in, but if you have a relation where there's no dependence, then you should just get rid of it. You wouldn't want to make a table with one field in it. That would be kind of crazy. So he goes away. So then I'm looking here now at this. Now it says to move the dependents into the new relation. So that meant that when I brought prod name and prod price down, that I could actually move them, which means I want to get rid of them in the original diagram. So I delete them, and then I delete the lines that they went to, like that, and then quantity can be brought over like this. So now I have two relations that remain. Each relation must have a primary key and be in second normal form. And they are. They are both in that condition. Now you'll notice here that prod ID now is its own relation. So the prod ID up here actually becomes a foreign key. So I'm going to take that and make it italics instead, because it's now a foreign key field. So I just added to my requirements here for step B, if the new relation has only the determinant and no dependents, eliminate the relation. That was for my order ID. Step C said to make the determinant attribute in the original relation a foreign key. So basically when I brought product ID out and its dependents came out, that back in my original diagram, I would want to make prod ID here a foreign key, and I did that. So now each relation must have a primary key and be in second normal form. Well, there are no partial dependencies now, so it is. It is in that condition. So now I can move forward into my third normal form test. So coming in now to my test for third normal form, I took the relation back when I did my first normal form right here. Remember I had two of them, right? And the first one, when I brought him down, he was already cleared for second normal form because he only had a single attribute as a primary key. So what I can do with this first relation is to bring him right down to the third normal form test, which is what I did. So if you go down to the third normal form, the first diagram right here is what you saw up in the very first 1NF test. The next two diagrams are what were the result of my work for the second normal form. These two relations here, I brought those down so that when I get to third normal form, I have three relations now to work with. So I need to do this process for all three. So what I'm looking for are transitive dependencies, which is where you have a dependency where the dependent depends on a determinant that is a non-key field. So for example here, order date is a dependent. The determinant is the primary key. That's a full dependency. Customer ID, same issue. Customer F name has two determinants. One of them is order ID, the other is customer ID. Now when you look at these two dependencies at the bottom here, this one, these are both transitive dependencies because the determinant is a non-key field. You don't see that in the other two diagrams. So neither of these have transitive dependencies in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these over. I should move them down into the final checks area because they are good to go. They're in third normal form essentially at this point. But this one here is not. So we need to get him into shape. So what we do is we take the dependents, and the determinant, and we put them down below like this. And I need to do this for all three of them. And bring them together again down here like this. Okay, so in my new relation down here, this cust ID, it says to make the determinant the primary key in the new relation. So this guy needs to be made that pinkish color, and then the text needs to be underlined. And then I also need to put the arrows in here so that things are hooked up. And then it says to remove the dependents from the original relation, but leave the determinant. So I want to take out the dependents. But I want to leave the determinant there, which is cust ID. And then it says to make the determinant in the original relation, which is this one right here, a foreign key. So I'm going to put him in italics. And just to make him stand out a little bit better, I will make him I'll just put foreign keys in green here so they stand out a little bit better. So that takes care of that transitive dependency. So now I have two relations here, and there is no longer a transitive dependency in this order ID, order date, cust ID relation. So what I'm going to do is take these two relations here and duplicate them. I want to bring them down into my final checklist area like this. Label them easier this way. So let's take a look here at our checklist and make sure that everything is set up. Each table must have a name. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up the text fields for each one of these, and I'm going to put these into the correct font that I was using earlier. So the first one, I'm not sure what to call this yet, so I'm just going to put some question marks in. Got order ID, prod ID, and quantity. Now, order ID is a foreign key, so I'll put it in italics, and it's also part of the primary key, so I will underline it. Same thing with product ID. What about the next one? Well, the next one is all about products. So I can call this table my product table. Product table consists of a prod ID, a prod name, and a prod price. And prod ID is the primary key, and there are no additional foreign key fields, so we're good there. The next one below that is naturally the customer table, because everything in it is about a customer. So we have our customer ID, customer first name, and customer last name. And again here, the cust ID field is the primary key, so I underline that. And then this last table down here, it looks to be all about the order, because you have the order ID, order date, and then the customer ID who placed the order. So I'm going to call this one order. We have order ID, order date, cust ID. Now, cust ID is a foreign key, so I'll put that in italics. And then order ID, I will underline that one. So the only thing left to do is to come up with a name for this table at the top. Now we have product, customer, and order. And actually, since an order has many products in it, and a product can be in many orders, you should recognize this relation up here as a bridge relation or bridge table, because you've seen enough many-to-many relationships to know that's what that is. So knowing that, I will call it, if you look at the primary key, it's one of the fields is called order, the second one is prod. So I'm going to call it order underscore product. And the fields order ID, prod ID, and quantity. Now, the first field is both a primary key and a foreign key. So I'll underline it and put it in italics. Same thing with the product ID. So that is my solution for that. So now I'm just going to move, do that. I'm just going to move some of this stuff up a little bit so that so I can fit it all in here. And the last thing I think I will do, and this is going to look messy for a minute here, but I'm going to move the connectors up above the boxes so that they're all consistent, like that. So now I have all of my tables all in third normal form. Each table has a name. Each table has no partial or transitive dependencies. Each table has a primary key, and each attribute shares a prefix except for foreign keys, which use the prefix of the related table. The only field that doesn't follow that rule is the quantity field, because quantity belongs to the order product, and I didn't assign a prefix to those fields because order ID and product ID are foreign keys. So quantity would be the only one that could have a prefix, but because it's a bridge table, we can violate that rule in a bridge table because the prefix would be too complicated. So I'll just leave it as quantity like it is. Now, all of the fields in this relation are all required. So the final thing I will do is make everything bold, like that. And my solution is therefore now going to be these four fields. So if this were a homework assignment, that would be my final answer there. And you would want to show all of your work. You don't have to put the requirements for one NF in here like I did, but in your document you should have a section for one NF, which is right here, a section for 2 NF, which is here, a 3 NF section, which is here, a section for your final checks, and then a section for your solution at the bottom. Again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine does, but it should break things down and show each step along the way that you take to arrive at your solution, which is what you would then present for me to look at. So that's it for this example, and I hope that these 3 examples are enough to help you out, to get you through the assignment. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. You can email me. It's probably your best bet. Or get a hold of me at office hours, and I will help you out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.